Okay, so we'll talk about OpenChoreo, but let's start with me, the main part. No, just joking. So my name is Puneet Makwana. I'm one of the solution architects. Not part of the maintaining team, but I know the maintaining team really well. So maintaining team works on the product, and I usually work on customer deployments and figuring out stuff and stuff, right? So in this session, I want to introduce you to OpenChoreo. And then, I saw that, we're talking about agents, and AI agents are the flavor of the season. So I thought I'll talk about AI agents in OpenChoreo, right? So that's a part of the talk I want to talk about today, right? So again, gets extremely boring if I keep talking. So just stop me and ask questions. That's the best way to make it interactive. So anybody follows the Grumpy Architect? No? So it's a comic strip. I love it, right? And I was talking about AI agents and and deployment and DevOps and stuff. This one stood out for me, right? So this guy is the Grumpy Architect. I would like to be like him one day. Designing stuff that never breaks. And knows everything about it. And then the other guy, he's the Zen coder. He's like, he's got a cat. He sits down and he and his coding agent just rammed like 10,000 lines of code in 5 minutes. So he's that kind of a coder, right? So they're having a conversation, where the Zen says, "Explain what an AI agent is." And I like the response. Like this is a theoretical definition of what an AI agent is, right? But I like the way the Grumpy responds, right? He says, he's like one of those employees, right? You ask him, hey, do you know something about this? He goes ahead and gets it done, right? So I like that part. And ChatGPT and Claude, for me, is just like that. You ask him a question and it says, okay, yeah, how about a document? So that's an AI agent, right? And to make our lives easier with Kubernetes, with deployments and stuff, how can we have that employee, not the Zen coder or the Grumpy Architect, but the AI agent, right? So, yeah, let's talk about it, right? So they say, what is a definition of OpenChoreo, right? So OpenChoreo is a product, right? It's part of CNCF. It's maintained by WSO2, so we contribute as well. And what it is, right? So technically, it's classified as a internal developer platform, but it means a lot of different things for different people, right? So if I had to rewrite that definition, I would say it's a type of abstractions, right? So for me, with a lot of gray hair, there's a lot of Kubernetes config files that I need to worry about, right? So Kubernetes config file is just for the deployment part of it, right? But the moment I go deeper into my stack, talk about K-agent maybe, talk about the gateway, talk about observability, so much of configuration files, right? So imagine one change requires changes in 25 different places, and I need to remember which one goes where and stuff, right? So because I can't handle too much of complexity, I would say, hey, you know what? There are capable guys. There's a platform engineering team. I'll let them define stuff, right? And then developer comes in, and he says, oh, you know what? I just know what my API does. I know what my front end does. But I need to orchestrate all of these things together, right? And that's what the abstraction is, right? So the developer comes in. He says, hey, you know what? I've got a backend. I've got a microservice. I've got a front end. Here's how I want to route it. My microservice is going to talk to 3 or 4 different services. These are those services. And I want a Postgres database. That's it, right? I don't want to worry about where do I deploy Postgres? Is there an existing Postgres database? Let the platform engineers worry about it, right? And that is what Choreo is, right? So OpenChoreo, I should say, not Choreo. So OpenChoreo was created with that intention. But the fact that amazes me is, you guys have seen one of those skills, right, for the Claudes and the codecs and the stuff, right? the day when I first saw a definition of skills, I was very disappointed. Why? Because I was like, hey, this has got to be something that I don't understand in there, right? But the skill was all in an English language. Okay, what does that mean is you teach the agent the way you understand it yourself. So what happens is with OpenChoreo, because it was created for developers to handle those abstractions, it naturally fits for the AI, right? And that's where the idea of agents inside the platform comes in, right? So I can have those AI agents, those agents inside OpenChoreo that can do the stuff for me, right? It's that one employee who not only knows that something in production is going to break, he sees it break, fixes it, and gives me an RCA before even I understand it, right? So that's the part that we want to do with, or that's the part that I want to talk about in Choreo, right? But before I get into that, two main users, right? The platform team, people who set it. Okay, so we are not having that conversation where is the AI going to take the job? Do we still need DevOps agents? Of course we need DevOps agents, right? Because they are the ones who set it up. They are the ones who draw the line where agent can go or can't go or how they should go, right? So you establish the practice of deployment. I have a source code repository. Somebody checks in the code, it goes into dev, series of test, goes into UAT, series of test, somebody approves it physically, and it goes into prod, right? So all of this stuff, you still need DevOps, right? So it's a tool which works for DevOps, where DevOps define what should happen. And then another key user is a software developer, right? He's the one who's writing all of those cool use cases, doing the real work. And not that DevOps don't do work, but they do important work. But yeah, so he's the guy who's like, okay, I want to get everything done. So these are the two kinds of users we have, right? And then we've got agents for both of them. So something about OpenChoreo, right? So we've got a lot of love from the developer community, right? So some of the most popular projects, Argo, and we are happy that developers love have put us in the same bucket as them. We are very excited, and so it's really working well for us, at least at this stage. So then the question comes is, hey, you talk about DevOps, but isn't there a million ways to deploy? I've got OpenShift on-premise, I've got EKS, I've got AKS, and then I want to use Azure Monitor, I want to use Grafana, or I want to use Splunk, right? So the way we have done this is to start with, a person like me, to make my life easier. We've partitioned the whole platform into planes, right? So again, borrowing the most common control plane, data plane architecture that exists in Kubernetes. So we said, hey, there's going to be one part of it which is going to be the brain of the whole platform, right? And that's what the control plane is, right? As the name suggests, that's where the pilot, not the co-pilot, the real pilot sits in his cockpit and he controls, right? And then we have all the relevant functions are broken down into separate subplanes, right? So on the top, we have the workflow planes, right? So CI/CDs are very complicated, so given a plane of its own, right? Then comes observability, too much of data, too much of metrics, too much of configuration. Observability gets its own plane as well. And then where the real work happens, your transactions passes, the work real happens, the workload, that's the data plane. Okay? And these are more of the logical encapsulation of capabilities, right? And what happens is, again, these are abstractions, right? Underneath could be anything, right? So for example, data plane could be, so what we've done is we've said, oh, you know what? Kubernetes is the enterprise operating system of the world, right? So you have to deploy it on Kubernetes. But then we don't care where the Kubernetes is running on, right? It can be an OpenShift, it can be EKS, AKS, or even Alibaba Cloud, wherever, right? It doesn't matter. Then we've said, okay, you know what? And there are standards, right? For observability, it's very easy. OTel is like the global standard everywhere. So what we say is, hey, you know what? We will have some native integrations with the big providers like Splunk and Log Monitor and CloudWatch and stuff. But you don't have to stick with the options that we provide. You have options of removing it and putting it the way you want to, even if we don't support it, right? So whole platform is modularized, right? So very easy for you to remove something and put something in, okay? Now again, there are two phases of deployment, right? One is you can say, hey, you know what? I just want to get started. Give me what works, right? So we've got a blueprint of everything that's part of the platform. You can install it. The observability plane comes with it. The metrics comes with it. It comes with what's that? Open. I keep getting confused. Not the Open Search, but the other Open. Yeah. So that's the observability engine that it ships with. But can you change it and use it with Grafana metrics and stuff? Yes, you can, right? And I'll show you the modularity of it, right? And so is with the workflows, right? So it comes with the Argo workflows built in. But let's say, hey, I'm not starting to deploy stuff from scratch today. My company is already using GitHub Actions, which was down. And the issue was something else, right? Yeah, I was reading about the issue, but yeah, that's a digression, right? So which means you can remove Argo workflows and use your GitHub Actions there, right, in the workflow plane. So then we have the brain, right, the control plane, and we use another most popular CNCF product, right, Backstage. So we use Backstage for the human interaction. Now what we've done is we provide you multiple different channels, right? So UI is through Backstage, so people like me, prefer click, works there. Then AI is the flavor of the season, so MCP is supported out of the box. What does that mean is we provide you with those skills, those English-like skills, which I was amazed to see. And then it works with Claude Code, Codex, or whatever harness you want to use, right? And I'll show you an example. Again, I'm not showing you any live demo, but for people like me who don't want to worry about, hey, what's the command to deploy, right? Is it GitHub? I could just say, hey, here's the repository. Can you please deploy this on dev, right? It figures out everything, forks a repository, deploys it, versions it, creates a container registry, and keeps it running on the dev instance, right? So that's the MCP, the power of MCP, right? And then others who like CLI, we've got CLI tools. You can do everything that you want from the command line, figure out what clusters are up, what's the communication. And then we've got APIs too. People who want to automate it using APIs can do APIs too, right? So that's the experience plane we have, right? And this is the main control center, the main cockpit where all of the other planes are navigated, right? So again, 40,000 feet view. Let's see if we can go slightly down and I can show something what's inside. Yeah, this one is a slightly more detailed view, right? Open search. Yeah, that was the term I was looking for. So here's the observability plane. Now, again, we've had experience of what is it to query data, what is it, do I want to fetch all the log data in there because my Backstage is in there, do I want to extract all the logs and do that? No, that's a lot messy, right? So we've taken a lot of these learnings that we've had from last few iterations of the solution, right? And that's where you will see that some of these solutions, and let's start with the observability plane, right? You've got these logging modules out of the box, right? And then you're not forced to use them, right? So let's say OpenSearch comes with it. You want to rip it off and use Azure Monitor because that is what you're using today. Very easy to configure it, right? For metrics, we've got Prometheus as well. And then most of the stuff is based on OTel, right? OpenTelemetry. And then we've also taken care of having this, for the lack of a better word, an agent in here. Not a real AI agent, but so this is mainly to ensure that the logs stay in the observability plane. So managing all of those security, compliances, and the non-functionals is easier, right? You're not moving sensitive data back and forth between the planes. Then we've got the data plane. This is where the real workload runs, right? It works with most of the gateway providers, the K gateway, WSO2's our own gateway, Envoy. Again, and something that's not in there, probably if you're using Kong, maybe Kong also works, and probably there's a plugin for it as well, so you don't have to do all the plumbing around it, right? But if you had to, you could do it as well, right? And all sorts of other modules, right? So we've got the inbuilt scale to zero version as well. So, the same concept where if there are no loads, you're able to collapse it to the bare minimum instances required, right? Then, we've standardized on the Argo workflows for the CI/CD part of it. But again, as I said, you don't have to stay with it. GitHub's, Confluence, pipelines, whatever works. Again, there's been tremendous amount of details probably which I'm not doing a good job of talking about is handling the secrets, right? So we understand that secrets could be managed in the secret store, Kubernetes secret store, could be HashiCorp, Vault, or wherever, right? So we've developed those abstractions so that it doesn't matter, right? Because if you're orchestrating all of this, you will need access to secrets. You need a way to store it in the right way, right? And that's what it does there. And then we've got the control plane, which is where you have the APIs, the control APIs, and everything there. Yeah, and then I personally have tried working with the Claude and the Codex, and it works really amazing. You never have to log in. Just tell it in plain simple words, and it gets the job done. So what do you get with? Okay, so I had a slide over the modules. This is what I want to talk about, right? So all of those technologies that you see in that data planes, everything is replaceable. Like how my manager says, you are replaceable. Everything under it is replaceable, right? So again, if you want something, you get it out of the box. But if you are using something else, 99% chances that you will find a module that either we have developed it or community has developed it. And guess what? If you're using something that doesn't exist, it's not onerous to build one, right? And just to trivialize it, right? It's just a mapping of configs. We've got our own config model. You come up with your own gateway, for example, it'll have its own config model. Just define that mapping once, and it works forever, right? And that happens with most of the things that you see, right? Most of the components, you've got Kong in there, you've got API 6 there, traffic, and everything, right? So yeah, going back to what do you get, right? You get the modular architecture. So everything has been thought through. We've got components for mostly everything identified. It's very unlikely that you will be using something which is not a module supported, right? But even if there is something that you find that's not supported, it's extensible, right? And how can I say that without even knowing what the technology is? It's just because we are standardizing on what the standard is, right? For example, if it runs on Kubernetes, there's got to be a way to support it. If it's logging in OTel, there's a way to monitor it, right? So that's the beauty of the platform. You've got the platform APIs, you've got the developer abstractions. So again, probably what Abhishek wants to cover is running agents on Kubernetes. Do we really need to support agents? Maybe, maybe not. As long as it runs on Kubernetes, as long as the source code is on GitHub, Git-based repository, it all works. Right? It's got integrated observability, which we'll talk about. It's got the agents, the best part of the platform for me. It supports agentic development. We've got MCPs everywhere, so it's very easy to hook it up and connect with your CLIs or agent stuff. Declarative state is a main thing. So I see OpenChoreo, main objective of OpenChoreo is it maps the config files. So if one change that you do needs to reflect in 20 of those files, just do it once and it'll flow through, right? And then again, access control, what is the developer allowed to see? Things like, hey, developer needs to provision a database to his microservice, but does he need to have access to the username and password of the database? Can the DevOps engineer set it up as a secret and allow the developer to use it without giving him the secret, right? The principles of secret management. And the module catalog, right? Think of it as all the things that you can do in your company, right? So for example, you can have a catalog of the types of microservices you can deploy, right? For example, Node.js or Spring Boot, you can have templates define that. So think of it as you are giving the developer a template of what he can use and deploy as, right? So if let's say Node.js is not a template that is supported in the enterprise, the developer can't deploy it, right? So the only way to approach then is the engineer would DevOps engineer is going to provision that, create a template, and then make it available for a developer to use it, right? And that's where you can avoid those situations where the AI doesn't go and deletes the production database, because you can define and draw these rules around what can be done and what can't be done. So yeah, agents, AI agents are the second most popular thing in the world today, right? And then because of the way we ended up doing it, although our first user was a developer for whom we wanted to make these abstractions, we suddenly realized that if humans can do it, agents can do it 100 times better, right? And that's where a lot of our design decisions started paving way for agents as a first-class citizens, right? So everything around it, and some of these agents are available out of the box, right? So which means all you have to do is, when you start with OpenChoreo, you just have to enable these agents, right? Now again, if you look at it, of course, there's the LLM part of it. There's a part of it where it needs to stitch things together and think about the way it thinks, right? But let's say if you're talking about the SRE agent, what does an SRE agent need? He needs to see the logs. He needs to see the logs from the microservice. He needs to see the logs from the database, right? And depending on the error, it knows what's the problem, okay? It also knows that last night, somebody changed the configuration. And since then, there have been 500 occurrences of certain type of errors or warnings, right? So it knows what was a previous version of the config to figure out that, hey, this could be the reason to change it back to, and the error might fix, right? Then there is the FinOps, right? Understanding, hey, what are my resources running? How many nodes am I running? Am I using a 2XL, and the cost of 2XL is whatever, a few $100s a month? What can I do to optimize it, right? And that's where it analyzes the usage pattern, the seasonality in their data, and says, oh, probably, you know what, you could scale those down to 2. You don't need 5. Another cool stuff is the architect, right? The grumpy architect, but I guess not as grumpy as the other one. But again, so one of the cool features, I'm not sure if I'm going to show you today, is where there's a design time artifact where when you deploy an application, you can say that when I write my microservice, this microservice is going to communicate with these services, right? So that's a design time that the developer specifies that I want access to these backend services. And then you can validate that at the runtime. Because we are collecting all the observability data, it also shows you that although you said there are these 5 systems that the microservice is going to have access to, now it is talking to the 6th microservice, which was not stated. So understanding what was designed and what's in production, how does it compare? Right, so again, portal agents are the most common agents, right? So everywhere, any section of the portal where you are in, and if you want any help, you can always figure out, question it, what triggered this. It'll sift through the logs and tell you what the right reason is, right? This is the least cool agent, I find it, right? Yeah, this is the best agent I find, right? So what this does is that I can because all the data is available in the platform, right? I can also tell, hey, Mr. SRE agent, when do you have to start acting, right? So I can say that, okay, you know what? Watch out for this error in the log, and if that error occurs 5 times a minute, okay, that's the time you need to get active, right? And once it knows that, okay, it triggers the SRE agent, then it knows, okay, where are the logs? What logs am I looking at? It looks at everywhere. It's got the trace ID figured out, and it says, oh, you know what? This transaction here to here is what it is failing. And then it correlates that to what happens, right? So again, the coolest part of the SRE agent is that It not only understands that something has been broken, something is not working, it knows how to fix it, and if it fixes, it gives you the root cause analysis report as well. So I don't have to prepare one, right? And let's see if there's an example of that here, right? So this is one of the cheap examples that I show every time, right? Where you've got a Postgres URL, and the best thing is you just add another S. So easy to add an S and not notice it. And you do that, and it will give you this. This is a live dashboard, right? It tells you what happened, the name of the app that failed, when it failed, what's the severity, how many occurrence, and then it tells you the cause as well, and it gives you the confidence level, which is okay, most of the times it is right, and then it gives you the timeline as well. It detected this error at this time, it made a change, and then it was fixed, and it was 200 then. And then, of course, this is the FinOps agent, right, where it analyzes the usage, queries, budgets, and then tells you optimization. And again, a lot of it is some of the inbuilt modules of the Kubernetes. We are not reinventing the wheel here. What we are doing is we are leveraging all the capabilities that the Kubernetes offers, just surface it in a way where it is more useful, right? Yeah, this is the best part, right? For somebody who doesn't remember the commands to deploy, you can just say, hey, deploy this service, give the link of the repository, and it does everything, right? Imagine, like I only know a few steps that it does, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of steps that happen underneath, right? Goes to the repository, builds the code, chucks it into the image registry, versions it, and deploys it on a Kubernetes cluster without worrying about all the command line tools that you wouldn't want to know, right? And yeah, and then you can always have dumb questions like how I type, right? Check if there are errors in the front end, And now this the Claude has got even smarter, right? It's got a browser plugin, so it can even run a test case as well, right? Just go log in and add a few transactions and submit it. I just have to say that, and it will follow it up and give me a report with that, right? So yeah, that's the coolest thing, right? Because you've got all the things accessible in the right way. Now imagine if you had to do this with the AWS, right? Think about stitching or marrying your agent, your CLI, with 15 or 30 different services of AWS, right? Would have been so complicated, right? So again, that's where the advantage here is the abstractions, right? The abstractions make our lives easier, and it becomes very natural for the agent to worry. Yeah, nobody had any questions. I'm towards the last slide now. Please.
That was a great presentation.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I wouldn't mind having a catch up with you after this, but in terms of the protocols you've supported, I know you've got MCP, but there's no, I couldn't see A2A listed anywhere. Is there a roadmap thing, or you've discounted it?
Yeah, so very, very good question, and this is how I believe, right? So MCP is mainly for the system internals.
Yep.
Okay. Now this is for OpenChoreo to communicate with its internal data plane.
Yep.
Right? And my belief is, and apologies in advance if I'm assuming it wrong, A2A will come in more at the application level.
Yep.
Right? So I am deploying an application which the agent will talk, the A2A protocol then becomes a function of the gateway. Okay, so which means if I go to the data plane, and let's say if I'm using Kong gateway or WSO2 API manager gateway, yep, they support the agent-to-agent protocol, yep, and that's the communication that will happen.
Okay.
So it's more of an application rather than an internal. So what we saw today was mainly the internals of Choreo, OpenChoreo talking to each other. Yep. And my belief is, but again, I could be corrected if there's a use case which requires agent-to-agent communication.
Yeah, and they're the use cases. Like you want a team of agents working together to solve a problem. So does OpenChoreo lean into that, or that's more of the at a higher level?
I would review that and then say, okay, you know what? If let's say hypothetically, if my SRE agent had to communicate with another agent.
Yep.
So then, yeah, it's a good use case, right? So yeah, probably I will have to check and get back to you. I don't have answer for that now.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm sure with the modularity built into the platform, there should be some way to figure it out. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, so those internal agents like SRE, FinOps agent, and all that sort of stuff, what level of model are you finding you need to have? Like, I'm assuming like Haiku is probably no good, but maybe it's Sonnet.
Sonnet.
You don't really need
Not the Fable. Yeah. So again, our internal lab tests have said that you don't need the best of the models, but again, so there are certain. So again, while I said no to I said I don't understand the agent-to-agent protocol compatibility in here, but again, the SRE agent itself has got what has worked well in the internal lab test is that you have multiple models that you can use for one operation. So let's say you use a Sonnet for the planning agent, the root agent, who says, okay, you know what, and then you use the Haiku for the search or the parsing, or retrieving the right associated logs, for example.
spinning off like
Sub-agents.
underneath itself.
Yes.
Different models.
Different models.
based on the task.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't warrant a Sonnet at the lower level where it's sniffing to the data and stuff. So that has worked well for us. So yeah, and then I think there's some configuration available in the platform as well where you can configure those, and you can assign specific model versions for each task. Yeah, good question.
Sorry, just another quick one as well. How much hardware do you need to spin this up? Is this home lab like type suitable, or is it like no, you need like heaps?
So that's another good question, right? So the dev version of it can be spun up on your laptop, like on our laptops. So again, I said that we've standardized on Kubernetes, but it mimics Kubernetes through Kubernetes Mini or K3D, right? And you can have the whole thing running on your laptop in 10 minutes. Yeah.
Do you have a working example of it now?
No, sorry. Yeah, I was planning to, but I couldn't get it in time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to skip it. But it's fairly easy. It's just because I was trying to do something for a quick test before, and then I was not able to reverse that in the right time frame. Yeah.
Because it would be good to see it.
See it, yes. So we do have a lot of these online models as well, where so again, there's a very good guide where you can, so like they say that you could do it in 10 minutes, but roughly 15-ish minutes. So again, a lot of it is scripted. So you just have to invoke the parent script, and everything else is downloaded. Depending on what libraries you already have, it spins up pretty fast. And there's an online version as well, but again, it has got memory issues. Memory issues as in it resets everything in 30 minutes. So if you've done some configurations, it won't be there for 30 minutes because there's a lot of people trying.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it the sort of thing that kind of takes over your platform and you're now using OpenChoreo for everything? Or?
So it's good question, right? So my personal belief is that if you're starting from scratch, it would take over. But a lot of times it is nobody starts from scratch, right? You already have some sort of a deployment pipeline and everything, right? So at that time, it is more of OpenChoreo adapting to it. And then at one point in time, you'll be like, okay, now that everything is in sync, I would let the OpenChoreo lead it. Yeah, but if you were starting a new cluster, you probably would let Choreo decide what it wants to do. But there is a lot of modularity in there, right? So just one part, right? Data plane also I showed as a single module, right? But it could be multiple clusters. It could be multiple regions. Dev could be a cluster by itself, or it could be just a local namespace within the same cluster. So you have that level of mapping capabilities so that, it's not a reinvention of the whole thing if you are starting midway. Yeah. Okay, just seeing if I had no more questions, and that's the link of the project.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Probably a question for you would be if any of them want to get involved in OpenChoreo.
Yes. Yes. So again, I clarified, right? I'm not the maintainer. I wish I was one, but I know the maintainers, right? So let's say if you wanted to try, again, there are a lot of ways to work with the community. We've got a Discord channel, and let's say if you have something which you think nobody's responding to, just let me know, and then I can get the right people to talk, right? But that said, the originally the person who was supposed to come here is a product manager for OpenChoreo, and then he just had to go because he had something else that come up. So again, the advantage that we have here is that he sits right here in Sydney, right? So if you've got anything and you're wondering why this and why you did it this way, he's the right person. He's my go-to to ask questions about the design decisions, right? So yeah, feel free to reach out to me or Binura. I'll leave his contact details as well. He'll be happy to talk, even though if it's not OpenChoreo, still in the field of Kubernetes or internal developer platform. Doesn't have to be OpenChoreo specific. Happy to share the thoughts.